What is up, guys? I am here with Blake Jamieson, the well-known artist. How's it going, Blake?
Going great, man. Living the dream.
Excellent, excellent. So, before we get into what you're working on right now, which is very exciting, what's your background? What brought you into creating art and especially creating art using NFTs?
Sure. All right. Well, I grew up in a very creative household. My dad was a photographer, and then basically, when he had me, kind of gave up photography to pursue computer programming as the computer industry was like taking off. My mom was also super creative. She's been making like mosaics and sculptures ever since I can remember. And so I was always encouraged to create, paint, make stuff as a kid. And I always enjoyed it. But I kind of had convinced myself, or let society convince me, that art wasn't a viable career path. And so I opted not to go to art school. And instead, I studied economics at UC Davis. And this is like despite my parents encouraging me to either study art or minor in art or explore art history or something like that.
Mhm.
So I studied economics. When I got out of college, it was kind of when social media marketing was really taking off. And so I was able to get into basically the digital marketing career with no formal training in that field, but there wasn't any formal training for that field at the time. So for the next almost decade, I worked in digital marketing, and that gave me some creative flexibilities to, do graphic design for clients or video editing or copywriting, but wasn't as challenging as or creatively stimulating as I would have liked for my full-time career, right? So at the age of 30, I decided to quit my full-time job and do something that I enjoyed doing every day, which is painting. And so that was 6 years ago. And fortunately, because I didn't have the background in the painting side, like the art side, I did have this background in marketing. So I've always had a little bit of I guess, a competitive advantage in the art space with kind of my marketing background. And so I knew that it was going to be important for me to figure out who my niche, who do I paint for and what are they like? And eventually that led me to professional athletes. And so over the last 3 years of my 6 years as a full-time artist, I've spent painting exclusively professional athletes, mostly for the athletes themselves. Sometimes that's commissioned by the athlete. Sometimes it's the wife or the girlfriend. Sometimes it's the agent, as a gift. Um, and so that's been treating me really well for the last few years. A year and a half ago, I was approached by Topps baseball cards to turn my art into baseball cards. Um, and hey, can you do that later? Thanks. Turn my art into baseball cards, and that's been really great too because it gets my art into homes thousands at a time instead of one at a time, doing these paintings for athletes. And so that was exciting, and that has kind of led me to today with NFT stuff. Just like Topps was able to scale my business in a new way and get my art into more homes, I think that NFTs has provides opportunities to do something similar. And also, I just think that the so far mostly unused capabilities of NFTs with all of the unlockable content and how tokens could adapt or change over time and all these different exciting things that are on the horizon. I think it's just going to be like exponential growth for my brand as an artist, and I'm really excited about it. And so I I think I minted my first NFT like summer of last year. So it's been, I mean, almost a year now, which seems like a long time ago. But I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't know how to market it. And also like there wasn't the hype that there is now. So for a long time, like I just minted a few things and tinkered around. And I really started selling my NFTs this year in 2021 with a little bit more focused effort in what I'm creating and for what platform and how I release it. And, with everything that we've seen with athlete and artists kind of coming together to release these NFTs, we saw with Gronk and Patty Mahomes. And, every day I feel like I see a new announcement. Um, I've got 400 professional athletes that I've painted for over the last few years. And a lot of them are starting to reach out to me to do these collaboration projects. Just brought me to today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice. So, funny story is that my mom is actually a visual artist. So very similarly, I grew up doing, hand painting, oil pastels, all the fun artistic things, charcoal, all that stuff. And my mom got me really into that, and I attribute a lot of creativity that I have towards, her very similarly to you, that upbringing around creativity and really trying to lean into it. And I think that it's really exciting now to see that it's able to be monetized for people. People are able to make these beautiful pieces and put them out digitally for people to purchase. And one of the things that happened when I told my mom about this, I was like, hey, you're using the physical canvases, your oil pastels and things like that, and your oil paints to paint. What do
Mhm.
you think about this digital revolution? And she had a really interesting kind of pushback on it, which was, she was like, it's not the same as an original. And I thought that was so interesting from her perspective, having, gone to art school, and she did all the visual art concepts for years. So what are your thoughts on, how disruptive are NFTs when it comes to your background in physical art, where you're doing these beautiful pieces for professional athletes, to now digital? What are your thoughts there, and what is the improvement there?
Well, I think I hate to disagree, but I think it is like an original. I also like the one way that I've kind of come to grips with it all, because a lot of people have a hard time understanding like what is this digital thing I can look at a picture of and whatever, I own it, what the significance of that is. And I think that if you look at a few things, number one, just stocks in publicly traded companies. People are buying stocks. They don't get anything in the mail. They're not holding anything, but
Mhm.
they own something that's intangible but exists, right? And so I think that I look at NFTs the same way, especially if you're looking at it from an investment standpoint of like buying NFTs or of artists that you think are going to have a more successful career than maybe where they're at then. Um, and then the other thing is like if you look at esports, I enjoy video games as much as the next person. I'm no competitive player, but like I like it, and I know that in these games you can buy what are called skins, which change the look of your character or some of your items. Doesn't change the gameplay, doesn't give you any extra features, doesn't make you better at the game, but it makes you look different. And that's a huge market. It's a huge industry, and people spend a lot of money to make their characters look the way that they want so that they can have kind of that persona online. And so again, you get this thing, the skin that doesn't do anything tangible. You can't hold anything, but just you get this special experience. And so I think between those two parallels is really what made it click for me of like why NFTs are sought after, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
and
yeah.
the founders of Nifty Gateway, they said it really well, which was how I described it to my mom, was the signature that she has on her original paintings. Well, she signs all the bottom right-hand corners of these paintings
Yep.
to show that they're the original, and that it was her intent to say, this is an authentic piece of my work.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, in at the core of these NFTs. If you're minting, 100 of your pieces, but they're coming from your original contract, that's your signature. That's like your cool cursive signature, however you sign your name. And I think that's how she kind of connected the dots and said, like, okay, I get that. The intent of Monet or Dolly with their signatures to verify that it was truly theirs and came from them. And I
Right.
loved seeing that bridge connect with her when it was um, truly
Yeah. And
truly
the
the
crazy thing there too, I mean, a great parallel is that like if someone replicated her work brushstroke for brushstroke, including the signature, and did it using the exact same materials she used, everything the same, so much that maybe side by side to her own piece, she couldn't even tell the difference.
hmm
That would never be an issue on the blockchain because we have that original signature, that account that it was minted from. So that's exciting for me. I mean, I think, to be honest, as an artist, I think like the whole forgery market is fascinating to me.
yeah.
I love And like a lot of times these forgers that are forging like old masters are extremely talented artists, and they've just figured out that copying some other work and forging a work is the best way for them to like capitalize on that. It's fascinating, and now it'll be interesting to see like how that market changes and shifts as like more things either go online and be tokenized, or maybe have a corresponding token that is the certificate of authenticity of a work, which is something that I plan on basically instituting this year and hopefully forever. Of like every new piece that I do will have an NFT that goes with it. That's the certificate of authenticity, um, that will then prove essentially the legitimacy of the real painting, right? If somebody has both, then it's legit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the concept that artists are kind of at the forefront here. I think that it's very exciting to me, obviously, with it being in my immediate family, having an artist. And I think that a lot of people haven't quite grasped that the really creative artists are all the ones pushing the needle here. And I think that that's something that's wildly underrepresented already in the space. Like a lot of people think that it's primarily technologists and things like that, but now you have this cool mixture of the developers shaking hands with the artists and
Mm-hmm.
creating something beautiful, that I don't think has ever really happened before. I think there's like the printing press. Maybe that's the closest possible innovation between creatives, but I think it's just a really exciting time. So what are you working on now? You partnered with Tops, and what does that look like? Like what are you making for them
Sure.
with them?
So uh, the set of tops that I'm involved with this year, this is my third set with tops, is it's a group set. So there's 51 artists. We're each making 20 card designs. And unlike some of the previous sets I've done with tops, we get to choose our own players. We get to choose our own images.
Cool.
Uh, we're not given any guidance. And there's no rules. Well, there's very few rules. And so it's fun because I'm getting to paint portraits of some of my favorite baseball players, and uh, then they get released and printed as baseball cards. And so on tops.com I have a new card that releases about every 3 weeks, is the cadence. That varies a little just because there's so many artists and we're all kind of alternating days.
Mhm.
But that's one project that I'm working on. uh, to be honest, like I paint a lot of things every year, typically between 150 and 200 paintings per year. And so tops being 20 of those paintings this year is actually a pretty small percentage. And so, maybe one day a week, I might be focused on exclusively on top stuff and then kind of tinkering here and there. Beyond that, with having like 400 past professional athletes that I've painted portraits for, and now everyone's seeing these NFTs gain momentum. Like I mentioned earlier, a handful of them are starting to reach out about doing collaborations, and sometimes it's also athletes that I hadn't previously worked with. And so there are um, probably a half a dozen NFT collabs somewhere in along the production cycle, right? The first one slated to launch on April 12th, which is super exciting. And that's a collab with Grow Your Base, Damian Lillard, and myself, as well as some other artists that I've kind of brought onto my team. So we have a phenomenal 3D kind of motion animator and an illustrator, and myself as a painter. And so the three of us are working on some kind of complete collections with these athletes that we'll be launching as NFTs as soon as mid-April.
Nice. Yeah, I'm super excited about that. I think that it's going to be a very a very cool and our first, really big, athletic, I guess you could call it, or athlete focused collab. We've done some collabs with smaller artists in the past, and this is definitely going to be a super exciting partnership. So I'm super eager to see the designs and things like that. John showed
For
me
sure.
some glimpses of it, but
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's coming together. It's looking really good.
So one thing that I get asked a lot, is how to get started. So let's say somebody out there right now is an artist. They've been an artist for 10 years. they're creating art at home, and they've just come across this interview, or they've come across some of your pieces.
Mhm.
How did you learn through everything? I like to say learn through, just because there's just so much here. And what would you recommend these all the artists out there to help them bring them into what type of technology you're using?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and I imagine a lot of artists are probably the same, especially if they're analog artists that are working, with paint or canvas. Is I'm a very hands-on person, and so I learn best by just trying something myself. I can read all day long of best practices and opportunities and shiny objects, but personally, I'm just a fan of going out and trying it. And so the way that I did that is I signed up for at first getting kind of my wallet end set up. And so for people that are listening, this is like a digital wallet, right? That holds your currency and holds your NFTs, and it follows you around the internet. And so setting up, I think for simplicity, I use Coinbase, which connects to my bank and allows me to use US dollars to buy Ethereum. Then I set up MetaMask, which is a Google Chrome extension, and that allows you to connect to all of the different most of the NFT marketplaces. So I think those are the first two steps, at least that I took. Uh, and then from there, there's a ton of different platforms that you can release art on, and they're all different levels of curation. And by that, I mean the ones that are highly curated have a more rigorous application and a longer time horizon to get approved. So a platform like Super Rare, which I've seen a lot of success on. Fortunately, I got in really early when it only took like 2 weeks to get a profile approved. And now, I have artist friends who applied to Super Rare 2 months ago and they still haven't heard back.
Wow.
Um, so that's like a curated platform. Nifty Gateway is another example, very curated. And then we have the other end of the spectrum, in my opinion, is like OpenSea, Rareable, these platforms that essentially let anyone sign up and create immediately the same day that they make their account. Um, and so I think that's a really good place to start. I think OpenSea is a platform that I'm probably most excited about, just in terms of like belief in the company and like the long term plan. I think the Nifty Gateway is going to stick around, but and I think OpenSea is going to stick around, but all these other platforms, I have no idea what their long term plan is and whether or not they're going to be around in 1, 5, 10 years.
Yeah.
And part of the reason that I say that I'm confident OpenSea is going to be around is because they just raised $23 million from Mark Cuban and some very, very reputable big VC firms, right? So they have the backing and they have the clout, and they already have done successful drops with Gronk. They did the Bleacher Report kind of artist basketball collab. Yeah, so I think OpenSea is probably the best and simplest and cheapest for gas fees. So a lot of benefits.
Yeah. Yeah. They've done a great job. They've done a fantastic job, like keeping up with design, keeping it smooth, keeping it easy to use. And I think that they're doing great things. They've become quite the hub for
Mhm.
NFTs for sure. Well, those are pretty much all the questions I have for you. Where can people go and learn more about what you're working on, Blake?
Yeah, so my website is blake.art. And on all social media platforms, if you just search Blake Jamieson, you'll find me. It's spelled Jamieson.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited about the collab that we're doing together with Grow Your Base,
Likewise.
and it's going to be a lot of fun. This year is going to be crazy for everybody. But thanks so much for coming on the show.
Of course.